There you go. This is 25 RO 02127. This is a speeding ticket that was issued on April 11th, about 10:30 in the evening on Woodward near Webster, and you were cited 60 and a 45. You can admit or deny responsibility, or you can admit responsibility with an explanation. How do you wish to proceed?
I deny responsibility. I don't believe I was speeding at all. And based off of the
Could you
original,
raise your right hands, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth?
yes,
Okay, the officer will testify first, please.
Okay, so I was going northbound Woodward while the defendant was going southbound. I had my front moving opposite radar on, so I was reading the southbound traffic. I got a reading of his vehicle at 60 miles an hour in a 45 mile an hour zone. After he passed my vehicle still going southbound, I activated the rear radar, which also confirmed the same speed as when he originally passed me, at which time I followed him for a little bit and then eventually pulled him over.
And what can you tell me about the radar, please?
One, I'm certified to use the radar, and before the shift starts, we test the radar to make sure it's functioning properly, and then at the end of our shift, we also make sure it functions properly in between traffic stops.
Thank you. Mr. Cartwright?
yes. When the officer pulled me over, there were two things that he said that weren't related to speeding. I was moving in and out of the lane. I wasn't staying straight in the lane. That was the first thing. And the second thing was that he believed that I was under the influence of alcohol, which was a major issue on my end, considering that he gave me the breathalyzer test and I blew a 0.00. That is concerning to me because this is my third time this has happened in Royal Oak, where I've been pulled over and given the breathalyzer test and I come back clean and it's something else. It's always, well, you were speeding. So I just have issues with that personally.
Buckle up, guys. Today we're diving into two wild courtroom moments. First up, Judge Chisholm takes on a heated speeding case, and later, a dramatic plea for protection order unfolds in Colorado. The setup lays the stage. A confident judge, a fiery defendant, and a grandmother ready to air years of personal battles. This is where the tension starts to brew, and you'll want to watch every second as both stories unfold in unexpected ways.
Well, if they see a car speeding and they see a car weaving around in the time of day, you think it's a surprise that they might think that somebody that was driving like that would be drinking?
Well, no, because if you don't believe that you're speeding, and first of all, I have a car that doesn't even allow you to just move into another lane and swerve around. The car that I have doesn't even allow that. So that's the first indicator. And two, the fact that it was said that I was smelling like liquor and then I blow a 0.00. It's a low level of credibility for me. Now, had he had pulled me over and said that I was speeding, and then that would have been the gist of the call, then I would have a little bit more credibility in that particular situation. But saying that I'm under the influence and then saying that I could be drunk and to find out I blow a 0.00, I just think there's some credibility issues to me.
When you say that there's credibility issues, do you mean with your credibility or with the officer's credibility?
With the officers, I mean, if it appears that I am under the influence of liquor, and you say you smell alcohol, that was also something that he said, was that you smell like alcohol, and I didn't drink, I didn't smell like alcohol, or and those two things raise a sense of concern. And the fact that I get pulled over, and this is my third time taking a breathalyzer test in Royal Oak, which I've never been guilty of any of those things, it concerns me about credibility. I'm not saying the officer isn't credible. It just concerns me that there's some other issues, especially at 10 o'clock when there's a million young kids driving down the street, making noise and speeding. I'm the one that's being pulled over. I don't understand. It's just concerning to me. I love Royal Oak and I like to be in Royal Oak, but I get pulled over so many times in Royal Oak, and it just concerns me about, reasons of me being picked on, or however, whatever, however you want to look at that. I don't understand.
All right, guys, here's where the first hearing really begins. The judge calls out the speeding ticket, lays down the options, and the officer steps in with radar testimony. It's precise, technical, and sets the foundation. This is a calm before the storm, because once the defendant takes his turn, everything shifts into full confrontation. But right now, the spotlight is firmly on the officer's certified radar evidence.
And by the way, if I was drunk, he forced me to go all the way to the right lane in the middle of traffic where a car almost ran into me. Now, mind you, if I was intoxicated, that would be a terrible decision. So we went from the first left lane speed lane, or if you want to call it the third left lane, and he tells me to start my car again and merge over to the right while there's traffic. And one car actually almost hit me. He had to put the lights on. I mean, it's just, I don't know, but maybe that's just the way they do things. It's just concerns to me. And I wanted to speak freely. That's why I didn't get my lawyer involved, because I am concerned about, this experience and my continuous experience in Royal Oak.
The only thing you haven't spoken about is your speed.
Well, I said that I don't believe, I did from the beginning. I said that I don't believe I was speeding, because that's not the first thing that he said. The first thing he said was I was swerving in the lane, or I was swerving around between lanes. And then the next thing was, you smell like alcohol. So, I mean, speeding wasn't even a conversation. I don't even recall that being a conversation. I'm not saying it wasn't. I don't recall that.
Okay. The officer is certified to operate radar. He checked the unit before and after his shift. It worked at the beginning, it worked at the end. He measured your speed with his front moving radar at 60 miles an hour in a 45 zone. He then measured your speed with the rear moving radar. It stayed at 60 in the 45, and he wrote you for that. And the conversation about weaving isn't on the ticket. The fact that you took the preliminary breath test and showed that there was no alcohol is really a good thing. So that saved you some issues. And the bottom line here, you didn't think you were speeding, but he measured your speed twice with radar, and it didn't change. Two different modes on the radar. So you have paid a bond on, I do believe you're responsible for the reasons that I just said. And you've paid the bond on this matter, so the bond will be applied. That's
fine. Just stop pulling over black people.
Now we watch the defendant strike back hard. He insists he wasn't speeding, raising the fact that the officer accused him of weaving and even drinking. But when the breathalyzer shows a 0.00, his frustration pours out. He paints this as a recurring pattern, claiming credibility issues with the police. The tension builds here, as it becomes less about numbers and more about trust and fairness in the system.
And saying they're drunk, because I honestly don't understand this at all. Why you would give somebody a breathalyzer test when they had been drinking and they
drive
poured
60 miles an hour on Woodward Avenue and expect
I don't believe I was, and no, you or anyone else can tell me differently. I don't believe it.
Well,
but
then there's no point in talking.
All right. The court is calling 25C120 and 25C121. 25C120 is Agneta Noshtikal. How do you pronounce your last name, ma'am?
Well, it's Nachtigall. I mean, he can say it better than I can, of course.
Nachtigall. So Agneta Nachtigall versus Karen Nachtigall. And the other case, 25C121, is Agneta Nachtigall versus Carl Nachtigall. And these are your son and daughter?
Yes.
I really get concerned about these types of protection orders. All right, so I'm going to give you some general information, Ms. Nachtigall. I am going to take testimony from you, and it is your burden to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that a risk or threat of physical harm or threat of psychological or emotional harm exists to you from your son and daughter. If I find that that risk or threat of physical harm or threat of psychological or emotional harm does exist, I would grant you a temporary protection order and set a permanent protection order hearing. Of course, today I would only be hearing from one side in the case. If it is set for a permanent protection order hearing, then Ms. Carl Noctegal and Karen Noctegal would both be served with the papers that you have filed and appear. And it would be a court trial where, again, it is your burden to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the acts which you allege occurred and that they will continue to occur in the future. That is your burden to prove. You have to be prepared for a court trial on that day where you would present any testimony or evidence that you have and any exhibits that you might have. Exhibits are things like documents or photographs or other things. And then you would present your testimony and evidence, and Ms. Karen Noctegal and Mr. Carl Noctegal would have an opportunity to ask you questions, or if they have an attorney, the attorney could ask you questions. And then once you've concluded your side of the story, then they can present their side of the story. And you, or if you have an attorney, would have the opportunity to cross-examine them and their witnesses. And then I will make a decision as to whether you have met your burden to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the acts that you allege in your verified complaint occurred, and they will continue to occur in the future. Do you understand the process? Do you have any questions about the process?
Yeah.
You have questions, or you understand? I'm sorry, I asked you two
understand.
questions.
I
Okay.
understand.
All right. If you could raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. State your name for the record.
Agneta Noctegal.
Could you move that microphone closer to you, ma'am?
Agneta Noctegal.
Okay, and let's start with your protection order against Karen Noctegal. Why do you believe that she is a risk, or that she poses a risk or threat of physical harm or threat of psychological or emotional harm to you?
She has been doing it ever since she moved to Colorado.
Here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. The defendant recounts being forced into a risky lane change, nearly causing collision. His argument: if he were truly intoxicated, the officer's maneuver would have been disastrous. It's a desperate attempt to shift the spotlight back onto police judgment, but also one of the most vivid, emotional parts of his defense. The courtroom energy intensifies with every detail.
So what?
As soon as she put her foot in our house, she started being mean to me. And
But, protection orders aren't about people being mean or nice. What is she doing specifically that causes you to feel she poses a risk or threat of physical harm or psychological or emotional harm? What is she doing specifically?
but I guess it's kind of hard to say. I kept on running away from her because she's mean, and locked myself in my bedroom. And I started to get high blood pressure in the beginning. And I didn't want to say anything to my husband and to say anything. So I kept it all inside for years, and then finally, it became so bad. I was telling him all the things he was doing to me, and then my heart started feeling weird, and then I ended up having a stroke. And then my doctor, of course, he wanted to know if I knew where I got a stroke. I said, yeah, I'm afraid of my daughter. Yeah, she's the way she acts and behaves.
So what is she doing specifically that causes you concern?
There's so much. She's
Well,
very,
tell me
very
what-
sneaky.
1 second. What has she done in August that you feel?
Okay. When I wrote her that note, it's been about 1.5 years now that stay far away from me. So she has stayed far away from me. She has not come around, and I have not talked to her. But she's using my son as a supply and my granddaughters as a supply to be mean and nasty. And just recently, my husband, when he goes and see his daughter and son, he comes home and he's not like the same person. He's like nervous. And I'm looking at him, I thought, what's going on here? And that one day, after acting weird for 3 days to 4 days, just staring at me and acting crazy. I mean, not crazy, but acting strange. And then all of a sudden he goes crying like a baby, and he says, I can't do it. I can't do it.
This is the breaking point. The judge calmly sums up the radar evidence, states the defendant is responsible, and applies the bond. But just as things should end smoothly, the defendant blurts out, "Stop pulling over black people." That explosive race card instantly changes the tone. The judge cuts him off sharply, calling it out, and just like that, the first hearing slams to a close. This is pure courtroom drama.
But what does that mean, Ms. Noctegal? I'm still not understanding what I mean, it sounds like what you're telling me is Karen Noctegal is not having contact with you. Is that correct?
I told her not to because I'm going to call 911.
So she's obeying that. So why are you feeling you need a protection order?
Because she's using my grandchildren and my son. And if I go, he was going to take me to the market this one time, and he contacted his sister and said, I'm taking mom to Safeway Market. And they know I'm very sensitive, and I'm afraid I'm going to get another stroke, and I got a mini stroke. Because I knew what she was up to, and I still have side effects from that last.
So what is she up to? I don't understand. I'm still not hearing facts that really are helpful. What is she up to that causes?
She's slandering me. She is
Slander.
She,
What does she say about you? What do you mean she's slandering you?
how can I explain this? She also gets my grandchildren to verbal abuse me or do something abusing, and my son.
And how do you know this, and what are the grandkids saying?
Well, my 2 grandchildren, I had a Christmas party, and that was about 3 years ago. And for my grandchildren only. My daughter would not leave. She didn't want to drop her boys off. And then after we had eating the party, and we were going to go open some Christmas present, I knew my daughter was up to something, and She sat down by the fireplace and